The theme for today's video is going to be what I think is the hardest decision in landscape photography. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. There is something I struggle with in my landscape photography, probably more than anything else that I struggle with, and that's a simple decision: where to go. Now, it's not like I'm, short of choices. In fact, maybe I'm even a bit spoilt for choice, and then maybe that's part of the problem. But quite often I will spend a lot of time trying to work out just what's the best location to go for, based on the weather, based on my mood, based on the kind of photography I feel in the mood for doing. I think it's important to understand your mood on a particular day, as well as all of the conditions that may affect the photography. If we take today, for example, we've had a busy few days with various things going on, and I really wasn't in the mood for a long drive. So picking a location that was, a 2-hour drive away was probably not going to be a good idea, because not only would I probably have lost my creative mojo by the time I'd finished a 2-hour drive, while I was actually out, my mind would be on the fact that I've got a 2-hour drive back. So a long drive was not going to be a good idea for today. Now, as I said, we've had a busy few days and I'm actually a little bit tired. So, going out and doing a long hike, lots of walking, is probably not going to be a good idea either. So picking a new location when I will tend to go and spend, a number of hours walking around, exploring, seeing what there is to shoot, probably also not a good idea, because by the time I get to actually do some photography, I'm probably going to be too tired to really enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, I'm unlikely to get the best results. I picked a location. I picked it on the basis that hopefully it will be a good location if we get some decent light at sunset. It's a location I've been to before, so I don't have to spend hours exploring to find compositions, and it's only about a half an hour's drive away. I've come up to an area in the hills just north of a small town called Orchetta. It's not far away from the Amedorio Reservoir, which is a location that I've shot on a number of occasions. And I've actually been here on a number of occasions. But normally when I've been here, I've either got a situation where we've got no cloud and lots of direct light, which kind of looks nice on the landscape, but leaves us with a boring sky. Or I've had lots of cloud and no light on the landscape, which makes for kind of an interesting sky and the right sort of treatment, but tends to make the landscape look a bit flat and boring. Today I'm hoping we might get a little bit of a combination, a little bit of cloud to pick up some light and texture and create a little bit of interest in the sky, but also some direct light on the scene, which will probably be front light, because my main subject that I'm planning to shoot today is just up there behind me. It looks like a kind of a mountain peak. It's actually the end of a ridge. It's the end of El Castellet Ridge. And I always think it looks like quite an impressive shape. And it's got these kind of rolling hills in the foreground, which also look pretty nice. And with the right light on it, and maybe with a reasonably nice sky, we could get a nice image there. We've got options to shoot sort of fairly wide angle. We've got loads of fruit trees here, although there's not much in the way of blossom on them, but there's some quite interesting shapes. We've got the rolling hills, as I said, and we've got the peak in the background, or the end of the ridge in the background. And we can also shoot that telephoto, cut out all of the sort of immediate foreground, really pull that end of that ridge, that kind of peak at the end of the ridge in, and make a feature of the sort of hills around it with the trees sticking up. So fingers crossed. But before we get on to that, because we've still got about an hour and 25 minutes until sunset, so I'm going to have a little mooch around and see if there's any shots I can get in the meantime. There are a few trees with some blossom on, but I'm not sure there's anything that's really going to create anything of interest there, but we'll have a little play around, see what we can find. I've got a shot here that I'm going to try, even though it's early, even though the light is harsh. It might work as black and white, because black and white will often work in these kind of harsh conditions. And what I've got is there's a load of fruit trees down in the foreground here. They're kind of below me, I'm standing up above them, and they've got some quite nice sort of twisted, stark, dark shapes. And then over in the background we've got the hills, and then the peak of Castellet's Ridge, which I'm going to put probably just off centre a little bit. So the most prominent foreground trees will probably be slightly to the right of the frame. Castellet's Ridge will be slightly to the left. A little bit of wispy cloud up there. I want to shoot this probably fairly long on the wide angle, so probably around sort of 20-22 mil. There'll be a little bit of sort of like grassy verge in the foreground. Make sure we've got all of the trees in, we're not chopping any of them off. And then make sure we're nice and level. 1/80th of a second, f11. Found this tree with a few little bits of blossom on, so I thought I'd just stick my macro lens on, you know, while I'm waiting for some better light, and see if I can get some close-up shots. Probably not actually macro, just some close-up shots of the blossom. Probably try and get it with the light coming this way on it, so it's nicely lit. Just bump the ISO up to 400. Get a nice fast exposure time. Just wait for the wind to drop. Which it's not going to. Let's try this one. Actually, it looks a bit more stable here. I have to keep a close eye on the light, because I think if I want light on the peak at the end of Castellet's Ridge, I'm going to have to shoot it probably a little bit before sunset, because the sun will disappear behind some hills, and although it will still be on the ridge for a little while after that, once it disappears too low, of course we'll lose the light on it. And I do want light on the actual landscape itself. The sky is looking well, it's some very, very fine clouds, so we'll have to see. We're still half an hour before official sunset. Looking at the sun over there, it's going to dip behind the hills in the background in about 10 minutes, maybe 5. And I'm not sure how quickly the light is going to go on the scene. What I'm kind of envisaging with this is most of the hills kind of in the foreground will be in shadow, and then the peak at the end of Castellet's Ridge will still be lit up, and hopefully maybe a little bit of texture in the clouds. but the clouds are very, very fine, so I don't think we're going to get very much there. But it still might make for a nice image. So I'm shooting this telephoto. I've got the 55-200 lens on at 55mm. I've got my tallest tripod with me, and I thought I might want a bit of extra height, and I think it's going to work well, because if I get lower down I lose some of the impact of the peak, but getting higher up also allows me to kind of cut out a little bit of some of the foreground stuff that would otherwise be sticking up into the bottom of the frame. Hopefully, anyway, it looks like it has. So I think it's just a case now of waiting and seeing what happens with the light. Maybe take a few shots on the way through, see what happens. Sun's going down behind the hills over there in the background, which means we're going to lose light on the foreground elements now. So probably time to start thinking about doing some shots. Yeah, okay, well the sun's gone off the foreground now. Still got quite a bit of light on the peak at the end of Castellet's Ridge. Unfortunately, we've also got a jet trail going across, which I didn't really want, but hopefully that will dissipate in a few minutes. But this might be the time to get a shot. The light is just starting to fade off of that peak, off of that ridge now. I flipped over to a vertical composition because I thought I'd do a vertical one as well. That's obviously cutting out some of the stuff at the sides and the bottom, but putting in more of the sky. Now the sky doesn't look all that great. We're about 4 or 5 minutes from sunset still. I'm just going to leave it on this vertical composition now, because there's always the possibility, I guess, if the sky does light up in a few minutes, I could, composite the image and use the sky with a bit more colour in against an image that I've shot with the peak or the end of the ridge with some light on it. Cheating? Nah, maybe. But it's not like I'm combining two completely different images. It would literally be the same composition 10-15 minutes apart. So I don't have a problem with that. Okay, I have gone back to a horizontal format, and what I've done is I've taken out most of the foreground, left some of the hills around. There's a tree over here. The peak's kind of in the middle, just slightly towards one side. I might actually just tweak it slightly to the left. No, I prefer it as it was. Kind of like that. But that's getting more of the clouds in. No light on the peak, but it still looks pretty nice. Sorry if this is a bit wobbly. I'm holding the camera and trying to point and work the other camera at the same time. The colours came, the colours went, but it was pretty while it lasted. Nothing spectacular, but very pretty, quite nice sort of orangey tones and pastel-y tones that could look quite nice in a finished image. you'll already have seen what I managed to do with all of the images today, and you have to let me know what you think of them as always. And I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'm going to head for home now. It's going to take me a little while to climb down the hill and walk back to the car, and then I'll see what I've got as well. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, well, likes and shares are always appreciated. I've mentioned comments already. Stick around to the end to see my recommended viewing, both from my own channel and from somebody else's as well. And of course, if you've enjoyed this video and you're new here and you want to see more of my stuff, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you very much. And until the next video, bye.